While the MLB lockout rages on, there's still many big free agents left unsigned, wondering whether they'll end up in new cities next time baseball is played or if they'll continue wearing the same uniform. Welcome back to Penn State Sports Night. I'm your host, Chris Lemmo, alongside Logan Bourandas. So Logan, who's the top name left in free agency right now that we should be paying attention to?
You know, Chris, it's going to be a bang once he signs. No offense to the Houston Astros, but I think Carlos Correa is the best name out there still. And Correa is coming off probably one of his best seasons as a shortstop with the Astros. They almost made they made a great run in the playoffs yet again. Couldn't get the job done against the Atlanta Braves in the World Series. But now that Correa is a free agent, he is going to be a prize bat for really whoever wants him. And I think the Chicago Cubs could be an interesting destination for him. You know, the Cubs, they're starting a rebuild here. They traded away guys like Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez, and Chris Bryant over the trade deadline. They have a lot of money to work with here, but they've shown through signings like Marcus Stroman, who lobbied hard to get Correa over to Chicago, and they have enough money to bring him over to Wrigley Field. And Chicago, big market destination. Correa already has a World Series championship, probably not under too much pressure to win another World Series, so he can kind of chase the money. Kind of like Manny Machado, Eric Hosmer did when they first signed their contracts with the San Diego Padres, you know, first few years kind of rebuilding and now kind of contending with this Padres team. I think Correa could kind of see a similar thing with the Chicago Cubs and take a deal with them.
You know, I don't hate that pick, but I do hate to disagree with you because I got to go with the Houston Astros. I think that he's going to re-sign. I don't see why he wouldn't, because here's the thing. When you look at the lockout, the big discussion is over the luxury tax. If the luxury tax goes away or is raised a lot, which I think there's a good chance that happens, I think Houston has a very good incentive because they already have a lot of that core, like Lance McCullers, like Alex Bregman, and a bunch of the other guys, Kyle Tucker included, that are going to be there for at least through 2024, if not a lot longer. So I think he kind of is that last piece to that core that they could use. I think right now they're at about $190 million on the payroll, and I believe the top luxury tax is at $212-ish. So obviously, if they signed him right now, yes, they would go over the luxury tax. But I don't know that that's going to be a deal, and obviously he isn't signing until after that is known. But the fit in Houston just seems so right because elsewhere, you know, I do think that he cares about how the fans view him. I know that that could be one of those big things. And obviously in Houston, the fans still love him. So I just don't see, he already has that connection with the front office and his teammates there. I just don't see him starting over again in Chicago, especially for a team that, I know he already won a ring, but a team that in my mind is just kind of, I think they're going to be pretty mediocre this year. I know that they signed Stroman, but I just don't see that as the best fit. If there was going to be a team that I thought wasn't going to be good but could sign him, that was going to be the Detroit Tigers before they signed Javi Baez. But now I'm looking around, and I think between him and Trevor Story, I think he's got obviously the better chance of re-signing with his team, so I think he stays in Houston. Now, we talked about the best unsigned position player. Now, what do you think in terms of on the market right now? I think there's really two big players left, one pitcher that could be future Hall of Famers in Clayton Kershaw and, of course, Freddy Freeman. So who do you think is the better chance of re-signing?
Well, I think out of those two, you got to look at Clayton Kershaw here. I think that he's kind of going to take the nerf strategy to this thing, and I think that's the LA Dodgers or nothing. I think that he has a better chance of just retiring or going to the LA Dodgers rather than going out to a new team. We've seen teams like the New York Mets kind of have some interest in him, but I think just with his injury history, it kind of makes things tough for teams to want to sign Clayton Kershaw to a brand new deal. Whereas for Freddie Freeman, he's coming off a World Series championship. He's coming off one of his best seasons at an MVP 2 years ago. So I think that the market for Freddie Freeman is definitely sky high. I think teams like the New York Yankees especially are interested in a first baseman of his caliber. So I think that Freddie Freeman has a better chance of going elsewhere, especially since he did win a World Series. And as for the Dodgers rotation, they did just lose a certain pitcher to go play in Queens in Max Scherzer. So there definitely is an opening in the rotation for a guy like Clayton Kershaw. So I think he's a better chance in going back to LA, giving it one more chance at another World Series.
Man, Logan, I'm not feeling the love this Valentine's Day because I got to disagree with you again here. I think it's going to be Freddie Freeman that's the most likely to re-sign, just because when I do look at the Dodgers pitching, and they have a lot of good young pitchers that I think make Kershaw, expendable. Now, whether that means he wouldn't just retire, I'm not sure, but when I look at Freddie Freeman in that lineup, I think that he's the main guy that makes that go, because right now, outside of him, I look if they lose him, and they already are losing a couple pieces possibly from that World Series team, I just don't see how that offense is the same. And I think that the gap between them and the Mets has closed that significantly that if the Braves don't sign Freddie Freeman, they're at risk at not winning that division. I think Freddie Freeman also, like I said before, is a future Hall of Famer. I mean, he is on that track right now. He already has the ring, which is elusive, as you can see by a lot of other players that are up there in Hall of Fame consideration, but don't have it. Freddie Freeman, the only fit that I could see for him outside of Atlanta, I mean, and anybody should want him, the only other fit for him I could see is New York with the Yankees. But I think he's staying in Atlanta. I mean, I can't think of another scenario where a team has won the World Series and had a guy like Freddie Freeman leave right after that. I mean, he is the center of that franchise. As much as I like to say Acuna is, I think it's Freddie Freeman, and he's staying in Atlanta. Now, Atlanta is one of those teams that's been really quiet, but we've seen some teams like the Mets that have made some huge signings. Of course, you're very happy about that. What are some of the teams that have been quiet that need to have a big second half of free agency?
Yeah, Chris, I know you're going to talk about a team in the NL East in just a little bit, but I think a team like the San Francisco Giants, who's coming off a great run last season, making the playoffs with an unexpected record, beating the LA Dodgers in the process record-wise to win the NL West. I think they're a team that definitely has to pick things up once the offseason kind of resumes here. I think especially when you take a look at the NL West, you have the Giants, the Dodgers, and the Padres all kind of in that like same area of contention. You know, they're all definitely teams that can make runs during the next season. They're all very capable. They're all very star-studded. But the Dodgers, all they do is reload. The Padres, they're reloading as well. The Giants, they just lost an all-star pitcher in Kevin Gausman. He left to go to the Toronto Blue Jays, and he was an all-star. He was top 10 in the Cy Young voting. And they're probably going to lose Chris Bryant as well, as you don't know what's going to happen with him. It's probably likely that he's not going to re-sign with the Giants once the offseason resumes here. So the Giants are still definitely in need of definitely a pitcher and a batter as well. It's kind of an older lineup too, so there's a lot of pieces to replace, including a guy who I haven't mentioned yet, and Buster Posey, who just retired after having one of his best seasons as a pro. So there's a lot of work to do in San Francisco if they want to keep grounds here with the Dodgers and the Padres in the NL West.
Yeah, that's a good pick there. I think the reason I didn't pick San Francisco was mostly because, I mean, when you look at Buster Posey retiring, I think that really hurts and sends them more into a rebuild phase than compete. I know the last couple of years they've had sort of this little window of competition that nobody really expected, but I think at this point, without Posey, who produced at, again, the highest level last year, it's just going to be really hard to compete this year in a division with San Diego and LA. So, but I have a different pick. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I know you can call me a homer for that, and you know what? You'd probably be correct, quite honestly.
I would be correct.
But you would. But in all honesty, they haven't done enough to keep up with the New York Mets, as you know very well. The Mets signing guys like Starling Marte, Scherzer, and then a bunch of outfielders there as well. They're loaded. And in a division with the Braves and Mets, both, I think, winning 95 games or so, the Phillies just don't have that kind of a lineup right now. I mean, their outfield is Harper and then two question marks. I know Mickey Moniak, maybe, but it's not good enough to compete with the rest of the division. Maybe if they add another wild card spot as part of the new CBA, which is very possible, but the Phillies need to make some big moves. They haven't signed really anybody. They signed one relief pitcher, but let go of their best relief pitcher in Hector Neris. They need that shutdown closer. They haven't signed one. It's been years now with a bad bullpen, historically bad really the last 2 years. So I expect them to do that, and I expect them to go after one or two outfield pieces to really shore up a pretty unsettled situation there in the outfield in the city of brotherly love. That's all the time we have on this edition of Penn State Sports Night. Hopefully next time we'll have some good news about the lockout and players heading to spring training. But until then, you can keep it right here for all the latest on the MLB lockout during this extended offseason. For Logan Bourandas, I'm Chris Lemmo, and have a good night.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We hope you liked that segment.
And we're sure there's other Penn State Sports Night segments that you are going to love as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
And check us out on social media for updates and behind the scenes clips and pics. Follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.